This video will give you an idea of the relationship between your ISO, your aperture, and your shutter speed that is the basis of all the cameras that you have. For example, on aperture priority here, this handles the depth of field. In other words, how much of this picture is going to be in focus. That is aperture, and that is your depth of field. The bigger this number, the more is going to be in focus. On your compact cameras, that would be the landscape mode. Notice here that if I have on a mostly sunny day an ISO of 200 and an f/36, very few cameras have this. Let's take it down to f/22, which is normal. Notice that to get this shot, it's going to set the shutter speed for you at 1/30th of a second. Again, the landscape mode. Click. And notice how sharp everything is. But at 1/30th of a second, the pinwheel is blurred. That would be setting this up on landscape scene mode on your compact cameras or your aperture priority on your DSLR cameras. Okay? Shutter priority. Now, I'm making the decision that I want this pinwheel to be in tack sharp focus. I want it stopped. So in this case, I'm going to put this on sports scene, or I'm going to set my camera to about 1/200th of a second. Notice I'm down to f9 here. So as I move this slower, my aperture has changed. So I'm going to make this about 1/60th, 1/200th of a second, 1/60th of a second. Boom. That is slightly blurred. So it's not what I want yet. So I'm going to go here again, shutter. I'm going to take it to 1/250th of a second. Sports scene, click, and now that is in sharp focus, and F8 has caused this to be slightly blurry. So you see the relationship here. Now, so if every time I move this on my shutter, my aperture changes, and every time I move my aperture, my shutter changes, in other words, going back between landscape mode and sports mode, see how that relationship goes on? The only real control I have here is my ISO. That is the sensitivity to the camera. So I'm going to make this about 400. Let's stick that up to 800. Now look, everything has moved up. So I'm going to take this to shutter priority or sports mode, and I'm going to bring that back down to 1/200th of a second. Notice now it's f18, snap the picture, and look, sharp all the way around, and we're still having that blur take place. So you notice the higher the ISO, the more pixelated the picture might get. So let's take this down to shutter priority again. I want to freeze that pinwheel. Shutter priority. Snap. Frozen in time at 800 f13. Follow? All of that works together in this relationship. All right? This will change drastically if you are less sunny. Say it's overcast. I'm at 800. Notice how the aperture has dropped to f4 as I've stayed at 1/400th of a second. So I might want to go down to 1/320 and watch. Click. And it's frozen in time. I have 4, 5. And so depending on my lighting, that's what I get. In a portrait mode, you'll want to be closer to your subject. In a portrait mode, and that's usually about a 35, maybe a 50 millimeter lens here. There, you can set that up. And I'm going to be that close because I do not want that background to be disturbing. So I'm going to make this at aperture priority, and I'm going to stay at 1/320th of a second, maybe 1/250th here. Click, and there she is. The pinwheel is out of focus, but she is in good focus. We are pixelating a bit. Let's move this down to 600, 400, pardon me, and 1/200th of a second. Click, and notice less pixelization. Okay, but notice what happens here, 1/200th of a second. If I still want that pinwheel on an overcast day, 2.8, 400, snap, and right there, the pinwheel is stopped. She is frozen in time, and that is a portrait with nothing in the background that's getting in my way. So notice the closer we get to the subject, portrait mode, sports mode, and landscape mode all have to do with your ISO, which is the sensitivity of your camera, the aperture, which manages your depth of field, and your shutter speed. What do you want in focus? In other words, do you want to stop action or not?